everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I want to ask you to please remember to like and share these videos if you enjoy what I do, and so others can also find them. And also, please remember to subscribe to the channel. And make sure you click that little notification bell so you can be notified of my next uploaded videos. Did you know that the U.S. was found guilty of genocide against Black, brown, and indigenous people? Well, they were. On October 23, 2021, the U.S. was found guilty by an international jury for the United Nations. But this journey did not start in 2021. It started 70 years ago. On December 17, 1951, the UN received a petition in two cities at the same time. One was presented in New York at the United Nations offices by Paul Robeson, and the second was presented in Paris to the United Nations offices by William Patterson. This petition accused the U.S. of genocide against Black people. It was a 240-page petition titled, "We Charge Genocide, the Crime of Government Against the Negro People." But the petition was largely ignored. It was actually just kind of set aside by the United Nations at that time, just pushed to the side. And in the U.S., the mainstream media totally ignored it, as would be expected because the mainstream media was and still is controlled mostly by palm-colored people who never really cared about the plight of the Black person in this country. What's not so ironic is that this document is just as relevant today as it was back then when it was presented in the 1950s, because the plight of the Black person in the U.S. still remains dire. 70 years later, finally, a panel of 9 international jurists were assembled to review and discuss the human rights issues that are against the U.S. that were presented to the United Nations. Originally, the United Nations really did not want to even look at the U.S. and any possibility that they were committing any kind of crimes because the U.S. is power over the United Nations and many other organizations. But finally, they did take a look at this. So the jury met between October 22nd and 23rd in 2021 in New York at the Malcolm X and Dr. Betty Shabazz Memorial and Education Center. They reviewed 5 different counts. They reviewed crimes of police brutality, mass incarceration, political prisoners, environmental racism, and public health crises. And on October 23, 2021, the U.S. was found guilty of all 5 counts. But here we are in 2023, and the Biden administration has yet to even comment on this verdict. Now, we have seen reparations being shouted loudly within the Black community and finally reaching mainstream media and being recognized as an issue that's important to Black Americans, while at the same time, it has also been ignored. Now, one would think that having this verdict against the United States would make it a much easier battle to obtain reparations. But we know that is obviously not the case, that there are a lot of people behind the scenes fighting to keep this from ever happening. Now, we know that the history of this country is one where the descendants of slaves deserve and desperately need reparations so they can receive that boost they need to get on an equal footing with those who have used every means to try to keep them down and oppress them and keep the advantage for themselves. But the racial dynamics and the racism in this country will continue to be an obstacle to achieving these reparations, in my opinion. There always seems to be some committee that is popping up to not figure out how to distribute reparations and award the descendants of slaves, but just to merely discuss if reparations is even needed. Funny that they don't need to do that for other groups, but always seems for us as Black people here in America and the descendants of slaves that they need to sit down to discuss whether they should discuss reparations. No true efforts are ever really presented by our government to make amends for their crimes, past and present. For example, look at what's happening right now in the state of New York. The governor there has actually signed a bill that will discuss, well, I'm sorry, it's a bill to create a panel to discuss if reparations should be considered. Now, I say that she's just playing in our face at this time because this woman receives AIPAC money. She supports the genocide in Palestine. But now suddenly a person who supports genocide wants to create a panel to discuss if reparations should be considered for victims of genocide here in the US. She needs to go sit down somewhere and stop insulting our intelligence. And Black New Yorkers, you need to show her the way out of the door in the upcoming elections in 2026. And this verdict of guilty on these 5 counts has left me pondering what the real purpose of this ruling was, since it has not served any true purpose to benefit us Black people here in America to date. So guys, that's it for today's video. And as always, please remember to like, share, subscribe, and comment on what you think about today's story. I'll see you soon.